Have you ever paused before following one of those simple health tricks that promises extraordinary results? Someone tells you to place a single clove under your tongue for 5 minutes, and suddenly the internet is filled with stories of instant transformations. But what if the real story is far more fascinating than the promise itself? Today, we're not chasing myths or dismissing ancient wisdom. Instead, we're exploring why this tiny spice has captured attention across generations, what science actually says, and where curiosity ends and evidence begins. By the end, you may never look at a clove or viral health advice the same way again. Let me ask you something. How many times have you scrolled past a video that promised to change your life in less than a minute? Maybe it claimed that one simple habit could improve your health overnight. Maybe it showed someone holding up an ordinary kitchen spice with a dramatic expression, promising results that sounded almost too incredible to believe. Chances are you stopped for at least a few seconds. Most of us do. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in human nature. Now imagine seeing someone say, "Place one clove under your tongue for just a few minutes, and you'll be amazed by what happens." It's a tiny spice. It costs almost nothing. It has been sitting quietly in kitchens around the world for centuries. Yet suddenly it's being presented as if it holds a hidden secret that modern life somehow forgot. That alone is enough to make people wonder, what if I've been overlooking something this whole time? This is how ideas spread in today's world. They don't need years to travel across countries anymore. They need a few seconds, a catchy thumbnail, a confident voice, and a headline that sparks just enough curiosity to stop your thumb from scrolling. Within hours, millions of people can watch the same claim, repeat it to friends, and pass it along without ever asking one important question. How do we actually know this is true? What's fascinating isn't just the clove itself, it's the way our minds work. We're naturally attracted to simple solutions for complicated problems. If someone tells us that years of fatigue, stress, or discomfort could be eased by one tiny change, we want to believe it. Our brains are wired to look for shortcuts because shortcuts save time, energy, and effort. Sometimes they lead to genuine discoveries. Other times they lead us down paths built more on hope than on evidence. That doesn't mean every traditional remedy is wrong. Far from it. Many natural ingredients have inspired modern medicine, and some have been valued across generations for good reasons. The real challenge is learning to separate centuries of practical experience from modern internet hype. Those are not always the same thing. Think about innovation for a moment. Every breakthrough begins with curiosity. Someone asks a question that nobody else thought to ask, but curiosity alone isn't enough. The next step is testing, measuring, questioning, and challenging assumptions until the facts become clearer than the story. That's how progress happens. Whether you're building advanced technology or evaluating a centuries-old spice, the process is remarkably similar. You don't accept extraordinary claims because they're exciting. You investigate them because the truth matters more than the headlines. So before we decide whether this tiny clove deserves all the attention it's receiving, let's slow down and examine what actually happens when it goes under your tongue, and whether the science is as surprising as the viral videos suggest. The future belongs to those who stay curious but trust evidence over excitement. So let's take the next logical step. We've talked about why this idea spreads so quickly, but now we need to understand what's actually happening when someone places a clove under their tongue. This is where curiosity meets biology, and where assumptions should give way to observation. The area beneath your tongue is unique. It's lined with a thin membrane and filled with tiny blood vessels that sit very close to the surface. Because of that, certain medicines are intentionally designed to dissolve there. Instead of traveling through the digestive system first, some compounds can enter the bloodstream more directly. In emergency medicine, this route can make an enormous difference. That's not a myth, it's a well-established scientific principle. Now here's where things become interesting. Many people hear that fact and immediately make a leap in logic. If some medicines work under the tongue, then surely a clove must work the same way. It sounds reasonable at first, but science isn't built on what sounds reasonable. It's built on what can actually be demonstrated. A clove isn't a manufactured medicine with carefully engineered ingredients designed for rapid absorption. It's a natural spice with a complex mixture of compounds locked inside its plant structure. When you place it under your tongue, your saliva begins interacting with it. As you gently hold or chew it, some of its natural oils are released, including a compound called eugenol, which has been studied for its distinctive properties. You may notice a warm sensation, a slightly numb feeling, or an intense spicy flavor. Those experiences are very real. But feeling something doesn't automatically mean your entire body is experiencing a dramatic transformation. That's an important distinction. Our senses are powerful, but they don't always tell the complete story. A cooling sensation doesn't necessarily mean inflammation has disappeared. A numb feeling doesn't prove that harmful bacteria throughout the body have been eliminated. And immediate sensations can be impressive while still having very limited effects beyond the mouth. There's another another fascinating piece of the puzzle. The ritual itself can influence how we perceive the outcome. When people expect a positive result, they often pay closer attention to every small change. If they feel slightly more refreshed, they connect it to the clove. And if nothing changes, they may simply move on without mentioning it. That's part of how powerful stories are created. Positive experiences get shared. Ordinary experiences usually don't. This doesn't mean the clove is useless. Quite the opposite. It simply means we should understand what it's realistically capable of. Nature deserves respect, not exaggeration. A spice can have beneficial properties without being a miracle cure. In fact, appreciating what it genuinely offers is far more valuable than chasing impossible promises. The real lesson here is bigger than one clove. And every time we encounter a health claim, we should pause and ask a few simple questions. What exactly is entering the body? How much is being absorbed? Has this effect been measured in reliable studies? And are the extraordinary claims supported by extraordinary evidence? Those questions don't make us skeptical for the sake of skepticism. They make us better thinkers. They help us separate fascinating possibilities from proven realities. And that's how progress is made in medicine, in engineering, and in every field that truly advances humanity. Because the smartest path isn't believing everything or rejecting everything, it's understanding the difference. Now that we've explored what actually happens when a clove sits under your tongue, the next question is obvious. Why has this tiny spice earned such a remarkable reputation in the first place? The answer isn't hidden in internet trends. It's rooted in history, chemistry, and the fascinating ways humans have used nature long before modern laboratories existed. For thousands of years, cloves have been valued in different cultures, not because they were seen as magical, but because people observed that they seemed to serve practical purposes. Traders once carried them across continents. They were precious enough to influence trade routes and economies. That alone tells you they were considered far more than an ordinary kitchen ingredient. But history, while fascinating, isn't the same thing as scientific proof. It's a starting point, not the final answer. The real star inside a clove is a natural compound called eugenol. This is the substance that gives cloves their distinctive aroma and much of their familiar taste. If you've ever bitten into a clove, you know the sensation. There's warmth, a slight tingling effect, and sometimes even a temporary numbness. That's not your imagination. Eugenol has been studied for its local anesthetic and antimicrobial properties, which is one reason clove oil has long been associated with temporary relief for tooth discomfort and has been used in some areas of dentistry. That's an important distinction. Notice the word temporary. Science often speaks in measured language, while the internet prefers dramatic headlines. A compound can be genuinely useful without solving every problem it's connected to. That's where expectations need to stay grounded. Researchers have also explored cloves' antioxidant properties. Antioxidants help protect cells from oxidative stress, which is a normal process that occurs in the body. This has made cloves an interesting subject of laboratory research. But here's where careful thinking matters. Many studies are conducted in test tubes on isolated cells or in animals. Those results can be promising, but they don't automatically mean identical effects occur in humans, especially from simply holding a whole clove under the tongue for a few minutes. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings in health conversations. People hear that an ingredient has antioxidant activity, antibacterial effects, or anti-inflammatory potential, and they immediately translate that into "this cures disease." That's a leap the evidence often doesn't support. Biology is incredibly complex. What happens in a laboratory doesn't always happen in a living human body, where countless systems interact every second. Even so, it would be unfair to dismiss cloves entirely. They remain a flavorful spice that has earned its place in cuisines around the world. They're part of many traditional practices, and scientists continue studying their natural compounds with genuine interest. That's exactly how discovery works. You respect traditional knowledge enough to investigate it, but you also respect evidence enough to let it guide your conclusions. Think about how engineering works. When a prototype performs well in early testing, you don't immediately launch millions of units into the world. You keep testing, you refine the design, you look for weaknesses, unintended consequences, and real-world performance. Only after repeated validation do you gain confidence that the system works as intended. Health science follows the same philosophy. Strong ideas survive rigorous testing. Weak ideas fade away. So the hidden power of clove isn't that it performs miracles. Its real power lies in reminding us that nature is full of remarkable chemistry waiting to be understood, not exaggerated. Curiosity opens the door, but disciplined evidence decides what walks through it. The greatest discoveries don't come from believing extraordinary claims. They come from proving them. And at this point, we've explored why the idea became so popular, how the area under the tongue actually works, and what makes cloves scientifically interesting. Now comes the most important part of the journey, separating what we know from what we merely hope is true. This is where critical thinking becomes more valuable than any viral trend. If you've spent even a few minutes online, you've probably seen headlines that sound almost unbelievable. One clove under your tongue reverses aging. instantly cleans your arteries, destroys every harmful bacteria in your body, right? Lowers blood sugar in minutes, right? These statements spread rapidly because they're exciting, not because they're well supported. The more dramatic the promise, the more likely it is to be shared. That's the reality of today's attention economy. The problem is that our brains are naturally drawn to certainty. We like simple answers to complex questions. If someone says this one habit solves 5 different health problems, it feels comforting. Real science, however, is rarely that simple. The human body contains trillions of cells, thousands of chemical reactions happening every second, and countless variables that influence health. There are very few universal shortcuts. This doesn't mean the people sharing these videos always have bad intentions. Many genuinely believe what they're saying. They may have tried something themselves, felt better, and assumed the clove was entirely responsible. Personal experience can be meaningful, but it isn't the same as scientific evidence. If one person improves after trying something, we still don't know why. Was it the clove? A healthier diet overall, better sleep, less stress. The body doesn't exist in isolation, and neither do our habits. Another reason myths spread so easily is because they're difficult to disprove in everyday life. If someone claims, "You'll feel healthier," that's incredibly subjective. Feeling healthier can mean different things to different people. Without careful measurements, controlled studies, and repeated testing, it's almost impossible to separate genuine effects from coincidence or expectation. Think about how technology is developed. Imagine someone claimed they had invented a battery that could power an electric vehicle for 10,000 miles without recharging. It would sound incredible. But would you invest billions of dollars based on a viral video? Of course not. You'd want independent testing, repeatable results, engineering data, stress tests, and real-world performance. Health claims deserve exactly the same level of scrutiny. There's also a tendency to confuse natural with always beneficial. Nature is extraordinary, but it's also filled with substances that can heal, harm, or do nothing at all depending on how they're used. That's why responsible science doesn't judge an ingredient by its origin. It judges it by evidence. The internet often rewards confidence more than accuracy. Someone speaking with absolute certainty can appear convincing even when the evidence is weak. Meanwhile, scientists usually speak in probabilities, limitations, and careful conclusions. Ironically, the people who sound the least certain are often the ones who understand the subject most deeply. That's why asking questions is never a sign of weakness. It's one of humanity's greatest strengths. Every major breakthrough began because someone refused to accept easy answers. They tested assumptions instead of repeating them. So when the next miracle remedy appears on your screen, don't rush to believe it or reject it. Pause. Ask better questions. Follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it points somewhere less exciting than the headline promised. Progress doesn't belong to the loudest voice, it belongs to the strongest evidence. By now we've looked at the excitement, the biology, the chemistry, and the myths, but there's one question that often gets ignored because it isn't as exciting as a viral promise. Could this simple habit be the wrong choice for some people? That's not a question designed to create fear. It's a question designed to encourage responsibility. One of the biggest misconceptions about health is the idea that if something comes from nature, it must be completely safe. It's an understandable assumption, but it isn't how biology works. Nature has given us remarkable foods, life-saving medicines, and countless useful compounds. It has also produced substances that can be irritating, toxic, or harmful in the wrong amount or for the wrong person. The word natural describes where something comes from, not how it will affect every individual. Cloves contain concentrated natural compounds, including eugenol, and while many people use them without problems as a culinary spice, not everyone responds the same way. Some individuals may experience irritation in the mouth, especially if they hold a clove against sensitive tissue for an extended period. Others may notice burning, discomfort, or an allergic reaction. These situations are uncommon, but they're real enough to deserve attention. There's another important point. Essential oils and concentrated plant compounds can behave differently from the small amounts used in everyday cooking. Clove oil, for example, is far more potent than a whole dried clove and should never be treated as though it's harmless simply because it comes from a plant. More isn't always better. In science and medicine, dosage matters. In fact, dosage often determines whether something is beneficial, ineffective, or potentially harmful. People who have certain medical conditions or who take specific medications should also be cautious about trying health trends without professional guidance. The body is an interconnected system. Something that seems insignificant can sometimes interact with existing treatments or conditions in unexpected ways. And that's why healthcare professionals ask detailed questions before recommending even seemingly simple remedies. They aren't being overly cautious, they're recognizing that every person's biology is different. It's also worth thinking about expectations. If someone has a persistent toothache, severe mouth pain, or ongoing health symptoms, relying on a viral internet remedy instead of seeking appropriate medical care can delay diagnosis and treatment. A temporary sensation of relief isn't the same as solving the underlying problems. Sometimes the most responsible action is recognizing when a symptom deserves professional attention rather than another online experiment. This isn't about discouraging curiosity. Curiosity is essential. It's what drives exploration, innovation, and discovery. But curiosity works best when it's paired with judgment. The goal isn't to stop asking questions. The goal is to ask better ones. Imagine designing a spacecraft. You wouldn't assume every component would function perfectly simply because it performed well in one test. You'd examine every possible point of failure. You'd account for unexpected conditions, rare scenarios, and worst-case outcomes. That mindset doesn't slow progress. It makes success possible. The same principle applies to decisions about health. Responsible thinking isn't pessimistic, it's precise. So if you choose to enjoy cloves as part of your cooking or explore traditional practices, do it with realistic expectations and an understanding of your own circumstances. Respect what nature offers, but also respect the complexity of the human body. Confidence should come from knowledge, not assumptions. Real wisdom isn't knowing what might help, it's knowing when caution matters just as much as curiosity. We've come a long way from a single clove resting under the tongue. What started as a viral health trend has become something much bigger. It has become a lesson in how we think, how we learn, and how we decide what deserves our trust. And if there's one idea I hope stays with you after today, it's this. The most valuable thing you can develop isn't a collection of health hacks, it's a way of thinking. Every generation has its miracle cures. In the past, they spread through word of mouth. Today, they travel at the speed of an algorithm. The technology has changed, but human psychology hasn't. We still want simple answers. We still hope that one overlooked secret will unlock better health, more energy, or a longer life. There's nothing wrong with that hope. Hope has inspired some of humanity's greatest achievements, but hope should point us toward investigation, not replace it. When you encounter a claim that sounds extraordinary, don't ask, "Do I want this to be true?" Ask, "How is this tested?" That's a completely different mindset. It shifts your attention away from emotion and toward evidence. It encourages curiosity without surrendering your judgment. That doesn't mean becoming cynical. In fact, it's the opposite. Cynicism assumes nothing works. Blind belief assumes everything works. Intelligent optimism sits in the middle. It says, "I'm open to new ideas, but I'll let the evidence decide." That's the mindset that builds breakthroughs. Think about the world we live in. Human life has changed dramatically over the past century. We've mapped the human genome, landed robotic explorers on distant planets, connected billions of people through technology, and developed treatments that once seemed impossible. None of those achievements happened because people accepted exciting stories without questioning them. They happened because someone tested an idea again and again until the data spoke louder than opinion. Health deserves the same respect. If future research discovers new meaningful benefits from compounds found in cloves, that's exciting. Science evolves, knowledge grows. What we understand today may become even clearer tomorrow, but progress doesn't happen because we exaggerate. It happens because we measure carefully, challenge assumptions honestly, and remain willing to change our minds when stronger evidence appears. And there's another lesson hidden in all of this. Small habits can matter. Choosing nutritious foods, sleeping well, staying physically active, managing stress, maintaining meaningful relationships, and following evidence-based medical advice may not generate sensational headlines, but together they often have a far greater impact on long-term health than any single viral trick ever could. The most powerful improvements are usually consistent rather than dramatic. So if you leave here remembering only one thing, let it be this: don't stop being curious. Curiosity is one of the greatest engines of human progress. But pair that curiosity with discipline. Verify before you amplify. Investigate before you imitate. Let evidence become your compass in a world overflowing with confident opinions. A single clove may spark an interesting conversation, but your greatest advantage will never be a spice, a shortcut, or a trend. Your greatest advantage is the ability to think clearly, ask better questions, and keep learning long after the headlines fade. The future isn't built by those who believe the loudest. It belongs to those who keep asking, keep testing, and keep discovering. Imagine if I told you that one tiny spice sitting in your kitchen has generated millions of views, endless debates, and thousands of people willing to try an unusual experiment within seconds. Just one clove, one simple decision. Place it under your tongue, and according to countless viral videos, something extraordinary is supposed to happen. Better energy, a healthier body, faster results. It almost sounds too good to ignore. But here's the question that nobody seems to ask. If something this simple could truly transform your health, why isn't it front-page medical news? Why aren't hospitals recommending it? Why are experts so cautious while the internet sounds absolutely certain? That question fascinated me, not because I wanted another miracle cure, but because history has shown us something remarkable. Sometimes the world's biggest breakthroughs begin with an idea everyone dismisses. Other times the world's biggest myths begin with an idea everyone shares. The challenge is knowing which one you're looking at. So today we're not here to blindly believe a viral trend, and we're not here to mock traditional wisdom. We're here to do something far more powerful. We're going to separate curiosity from hype, science from storytelling, and evidence from assumption. Because by the end of this conversation, you won't just know the truth about putting one clove under your tongue, you'll know how to recognize the difference between a health breakthrough and a beautifully packaged illusion.